Minister for Treasury.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The PNG economy is facing many challenges. In this statement this afternoon, this morning, I want to provide a high-level context for the many more detailed actions that are underway in our individual ministries. The focus will be on moving forward, constructively learning from the mistakes of our past. On growth where it matters, Mr. Speaker, the Pangu-led coalition government is committed to lifting our people's livelihood. We know that the vast majority of our people, especially in rural areas, are struggling. As Treasurer, my focus is on lifting sustainable, equitable growth as high as possible, with low inflation and, of course, a sustainable budget. The Marape Rosso government has committed to lifting growth to at least 5% per annum in the most important parts of our economy, the non-resource sector, where over 90% of our people earn their incomes in agriculture, fishing, in shops, transport, construction, finances and government services. This is known as the non-resources parts of our economy. The non-resource economy is all of the economy except the resource sector, such as mining and gas. Unfortunately, from 2012 to 2018, non-resource growth was very poor under the PNC. Mishandling of the drought meant that non-resource growth went backwards by over 4% in 2015, the worst outcome in our nation's history. What happened? Well, PNC didn't care about struggling families. PNC did not introduce a 1,177 million household assistance package. Beware the crocodile tears from someone opposite. They have shown they don't care for struggling families. Mr. Speaker, this government's objective is returning to strong growth. We have a forward-looking growth agenda and growth where it matters for our families. What has been the recent experience for real non-resource growth? Well, there's some good news. Despite the global economic downgrade by the IMF and World Bank, the IMF has noticed that PNG's domestic recovery is growing stronger than initially expected. This is also reflected in external sources, such as the very positive results from the latest Business Advantage 100 CEO survey, which Prime Minister had mentioned last week. The IMF have actually now lifted PNG's real non-resource growth rate estimate from 4.6% at budget time up to 4.9% in its latest staff report for this year. PNG is now nearly at triple the average growth rate for the rest of the world at 1.7%. And looking forward, where specifically do we see growth coming from? Between 2022 and 2027, PNG's nominal GDP is expected to increase from 107 billion kina to 145 billion kina. We've heard these numbers many times before. On its way to a 200 billion economy by about 2030. The good news is that we are expecting strong growth across almost all parts of our non-resource economy. Real growth rates over these 5 years include 42% in the information and communications sector, 32% in water supply, 32% in transport and storage, 30% in retail and wholesale trade, 28% in manufacturing, and 25% growth in construction. The basic message is that there are excellent business opportunities across the economy. Now is a good time to invest in Papua New Guinea. On living standards, Mr. Speaker, with at least 5% real growth per annum in the non-resource sector and population growth of 3.1%, this means living standards per person will be increasing by a steady and realistic level of 1.9% per annum. Well, a 1.9% improvement in living standards in a single year has little impact, yes. However, after 10 years on average, people's living standards will be 21% better off. After 25 years, our children will be 60% better off. In 37 years, in 2060, our people's living standards will be double current levels. Development takes time. As we move forward, I certainly want to avoid the PNC record. When real non-resource GDP per capita went backwards on average by 0.5% each year from 2012 to 2018. Living standards then in PNG were falling. Let us return to at least the growth rates of the Grand Chief years of the 2000, and once there, let us increase these growth rates even higher. On jobs, Mr. Speaker, there has been a lot of discussions about jobs lately, and rightly so. So what creates jobs in our economy? The answer, the same good policy settings that create our growth. Most commentators only look at the formal employment figures for the private sector, primarily in urban areas, as measured by our central bank. During the Grand Chief years of 2000, we were creating 15,000 jobs a year in the formal private sector. However, from 2013 to 2018, job numbers went backwards by nearly 30,000 jobs. Once again, let us learn from our mistakes, including remembering someone sitting opposite talking about the importance of jobs, but then fails to mention the loss of 30,000 jobs under his policies. As one of my colleagues said last week, please come to the debate if your hands are clean. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased we exceeded our 10,000 jobs per year target in the 12 months to June 2022. Formal private sector jobs growth increased by 9,586 in the year to June 2022, the latest available figures. Most of that growth occurred in the construction sector, reflecting the government's massive infrastructure spending. In addition, there are estimated 1,633 new jobs in the mining sector, even with the Porgera closure, and 1,640 new jobs in the manufacturing sector. Mr. Speaker, let me talk a bit more about jobs in the manufacturing sector, as there has been keen interest in this area, with talk about the Big Biscuit Lay Company and tariffs affecting two other manufacturers. On the specific issues around those firms, I am pleased that the Manufacturing Council has been meeting with my office and customs to understand the underlying issues and find solutions. For the manufacturing sector as a whole, there is some interesting news, some very interesting news that no one seems to be talking about, including their spokesperson, the number of manufacturing jobs has reached record levels. I repeat, manufacturing employment has grown strongly under the Marape government. It has now climbed to the highest levels in our history. A couple more facts. From 2013 to 2018, under the PNC watch, there was a loss of 5,726 manufacturing sector jobs. Under the Marape government, there has been an increase of 7,157 jobs, recovering lost ground and then moving forward again. Mr. Speaker, returning to jobs growth across the whole economy, the increase of over 9,500 jobs in the formal private sector needs to have added the strong employment gains for our teachers, our doctors, our health workers, and our police. The best available estimate is that there has been an increase in these service delivery jobs by around 4,000 jobs just last year. Including these public service increases, we estimate over 13,500 jobs created in the year to June, already exceeding our 10,000 formal sector jobs a year target. With the 100 CEO survey that 64% of firms or companies in our country expect to increase the numbers of their staff in 2023, up from 46% last year, then the prospects for formal sector jobs is strong. On international engagement and the IMF, Mr. Speaker, the IMF and Australian loan funding is all built already into our financing framework. It is not additional financing on top of what we have planned, as suggested by some last week. It is included in the plan that sees our debt to GDP ratio falling from 52.3% of GDP this year down to 46.8% of GDP by 2027. Our annual financing levels are set out in our budget repair plan. We then work to get the best deals for this fixed level of financing. The IMF is a good deal at 2.4%. The IMF is not a bailout. It is a good deal. And I am pleased to announce this afternoon that overnight in Washington, the IMF Executive Board has approved US $918 million or 3.25 million kina package over a 3-year period subject, of course, to successful completion of our reform package initiated by our government and not initiated outside of our country. Someone opposite makes the extraordinary claim that only 2 or 3 other countries are in the IMF program. Just another lie. Since the pandemic began in 2020, the IMF have supported 93 countries. There have been 18 new programs over the last year, and the IMF now have an additional 28 requests of support from the fund. The IMF is more popular than it used to be. The opposition talks of public service cuts. Rubbish. The only plan is getting rid of ghost workers from our payroll. A clear government objective that we have spoken so often in the last 3.5 years. They talk of new taxes being forced upon us. But the reality is that we are just planning to pass the simplification rewrite of the Income Tax Act that we have been discussing with businesses for over 3 years now. They talk of budget cuts when all we are agreeing to are the figures that are already in our 13-year plan. And on the roadmap for monetary and fiscal reform, no specifics have been agreed. Nothing has been agreed on a devaluation, and we will ensure PNG's national interests are protected, balancing the gains for Kina, convertibility, and competition with the costs. Mr. Speaker, it is interesting that the opposition are using scare tactics about the devaluation. The opposition has already announced that they are in favour of a devaluation of 20% announced just last month in February. Remember that the person opposite raising these concerns saw a 39% devaluation of the Kina under his watch. Beware hypocrisy. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, we must learn from our mistakes and move forward. On growth, we must focus on what matters and which will most help our struggling families and our children's future prospects. And I am pleased that all credible sources indicate we are starting to make good progress. We must move away from policies that destroyed 30,000 jobs from 2013 to 2018 and build on the policies that have seen over 13,500 jobs created in the last year, with prospects for even higher jobs growth. We will work with our international partners, all within our budget repair plan, sustainable levels of cheap debt, and economic reforms that support our policies, not ones imposed from outside. Our starting point economically was not good. Too many of our people are in poverty. There are not enough jobs. There is not enough income. By learning from the mistakes of the past and moving forward with positive policies, the Marape Rosso government is taking back PNG with the aim of leaving no person, no family, and no district behind. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.